Can't wait for today's episode.
Same on this side of the table, El Capitan. Tobe Hooper is one of my inspirations.
And we're going to talk about all his stuff, right? Like, the controversies.
Oh, you mean like how the mob helped to fund the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
No.
How he nearly directed a live-action version of Spider-Man?
You know what I mean. How a particular group of assholes out there think he didn't direct a certain horror classic, maybe.
I know, right? How dare they?
We're going to scream it from the highest elevations of Horror Mountain.
Preach on.
It will be said.
Speak the truth.
Steven Spielberg didn't direct a damn frame of that classic.
Not a single.
Tobe Hooper directed it all.
Every frame.
But all will know Tobe Hooper directed Jaws.
The whole damn... What?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Spielberg directed Chainsaw Massacre, hands down.
Baby.
What is it now?
Rich is off his meds again. He's scaring me.
I'm sure he's fine.
You know what, guys? We should do like a commentary on Halloween. Like today, the Rob Zombie one. Love that flick.
Ah, crap. It is that bad. Hello and welcome to MonsterKid Fury. I'm Callie. Here today is Rich of MonsterKid Central. Hey, Rich.
Howdy.
And Rick of Film Fury. Hey, baby.
Hola.
This is going to be part dos of our Tobe Hooper talk. Go ahead and take it away.
Because Tobe deserves to.
At least two.
At least two. Because
absolutely,
people don't have the same reverence of him that they do of somebody like Carpenter and George Romero. And it is my belief that he's right up there with them.
I'm in complete agreement. I remember in high school, it was during my lunch break, I'd always go to the local bookstores. We had 2 bookstores and a comic store. So I'd rather spend my time there.
Sure.
And I remember I was going through Alameda Comics and Cards, and on the bottom of their bookshelf, they had this, written by John Russo, which became like my Bible for filmmaking. This one's actually like kind of cheap laminated with clear tape, But my favorite part of the book was a bit on Tobe, and of course I can't find the picture because I wasn't prepared for that. But there's just a wonderful picture. Our producer can put it up of Tobe at work, and to me, it's like the quintessential just example of a filmmaker. It's a profile shot, and you got the big, Panavision next to him, and he's just like intent and looking. And that was like the most read chapter between this and the Romero chapter.
Yep.
And
did he have his cigar?
Of course he had a cigar. When didn't he have a cigar?
Well, no, I mean, in the photo that you liked, does he have a cigar there in it?
Oh, and that one, no, actually, surprisingly, it doesn't. That
really?
Or his Dr. Pepper. Yeah, no Dr. Pepper. Wow. And no cigar.
Wow, the guy likes to shake things up, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was probably Premiere Magazine. Maybe Variety was there. So he's like, I got to do my Citizen Kane, my Orson Welles shot.
Yep. And those shots, the Orson Welles shots are just freaking great. They really are.
Every director has one.
Absolutely.
Every director has that one thing of just like, oh shit, someone's okay. Let me be serious now. This is my serious face. Carpenter does a fair amount of them, actually.
Yeah.
But when we left off with Tobe, he had just gone through the huge, some could describe as a successful debacle of Poltergeist. He had to come out through that production with some war wounds. The DGA had to take MGM to court because Spielberg's name was bigger than Hooper, and Spielberg had to put a ad out in Variety describing their relationship as producer and director.
Yep.
And we had a small window where Hooper wasn't doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd imagine that came from that emotional, level of scars, I guess you would say, from making Poltergeist. It was the one time I think he felt lack of control for the first time. because even again, like we discussed, even on Salem's Lot, it really was almost an auteur kind of thing. They just let him do him without any involvement or any circumventing of his
Right.
abilities.
And when you let
But
go ahead, sorry.
oh no, go ahead. I stepped on you.
When you let Tobe do Tobe, you end up with one of the most successful miniseries in history, as far as I'm concerned, because, like I said, it scared the crap out of me, and it's a made-for-TV movie.
Well, that's
So
something we it was something we discussed before. It's amazing how many times you can be successful in something, and then other people who are not even in your realm will start to tell you how to do something.
they're not even in your business. I mean, they're sometimes the president of such and such a studio, it first of all is a CEO for Dr. Pepper or something like that. Then
Right.
he happens to be running the studio, and it's like, why does he even get a say? I mean, really?
Why are we talking to the nephew of so and so? Why are we
Right.
doing that right now?
The only
So
time that's ever worked is Carl Lemley Jr. When he
he
became,
came in, took the reins.
and
Exactly.
and he's solely responsible for the horror boom in the 30s and 40s and 50s for Universal. He's the guy. So, and he was like, maybe, I don't know, I can't remember it, but he was like 30 when he took over. But
Which
other
is
than that,
considered a kid at the
yeah.
time.
But other than that, that shit doesn't happen. You don't call your nephew and say, "Hey, come on in, run the studio."
So why Toby's going through this again, what I feel is an emotional period for him. Uh, Menahem Golan and Yoram Globus call from Cannon Films.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Cannon was a huge up and rising studio in the
Yeah.
80s. Now, the whole thing ultimately tanked, sadly, which is something we'll probably do in a later episode. But at the time, they were shaking the industry up in terms of
Right.
the independent and even major studio system. They came in, they were fought with a lot of racism, I believe, true racism from other studio heads and whatnot. And Canon's mentality was we're going to try to get the best filmmakers we can working for us. So they have J. Lee Thompson, they get Sylvester
Mm-hmm.
Stallone over to their studio. You have Chuck Norris, and they go to Toby, and Toby has a meeting with them because he, at that point, has an extremely successful film in Poltergeist.
Right.
And what was described as I recall from the interview, a 15-minute meeting, he walks out with a 3-picture deal with Canon.
That's one picture
And
every 5 minutes, kids.
this entire filmmaking, the production period and release period is from 1984 to 1986,
Wow.
which is amazing to
It
think
is.
about.
It is.
Because debatably, your mileage, as we may learn between you and I, varies on each movie. To think about doing 3 films in a year when you have most filmmakers who take an entire 3-year period to make one movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first of these movies was Lifeforce, based upon a novel called Space Vampires. Our producer snickered. Did you hear that when I said Lifeforce? She's like, ha. I guess that kind of shows you the general reception towards this movie. But it was a $25 million budget.
Yeah.
That is huge.
It's
Even for
massive.
Canon,
Yeah.
that
It's
is massive.
massive. Yeah.
They did not invest in those type of movies, but they wanted Spielberg money. They wanted Universal MGM sort of productions going on.
Yep.
And Life Force, the way I feel about Life Force is that it's a series of massive swings that never hit. It is an odd film in that sense. But what I find fascinating about it is it's a American film shot in Britain that feels like a British movie. And I don't mean just because of the actors.
Right.
I mean its pacing, the music, everything. It comes off as almost like a late Hammer movie, like when they were
Yeah.
trying to get at, like when they were trying to make a transition from, well, we no one likes Dracula anymore, nobody wants those type of movies anymore, so let's go into the again 1980s big budget filmmaking arena, and it has that sort of feel. And not to mention when you see that movie at the age of how old was I? 12 maybe, and you start recognizing the female form, and that lady's naked throughout the entire movie. Which, funny enough, my mom didn't make me close my eyes a lot in that movie.
Wait, she was
And,
naked? I hadn't noticed. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, she was. Yeah, you missed that
Wow.
part. Oh my
Right.
goodness!
That's amazing. I had no idea.
And I love it because I think it's like Species before Species. I really think the guy who
You're
wrote
right.
Species was he was like watching TV, like, what am I gonna write? I need to knock out a spec script. I need to make 500-600 grand. Oh,
Yeah.
hey, naked alien going around LA taking yeah, we're gonna do that.
Yeah. They're like, hello. Yeah. Okay. We could do that. Yeah.
But with all these massive swings for different storylines, because one moment it's a vampire movie, then it's a science fiction film, you have a huge cast. You have Steve Railsback, who was a big deal at the time as a character actor between his work in the Charles Manson television miniseries, The Stuntman, just a really well-known actor.
Right.
And to me, he's like Wings Hauser or Willem Dafoe. He's just he's a guy who can bounce around from so many. Dwayne Barry
Yeah.
on the X Files,
On the X Files.
just
Right.
a really amazing performer.
Yeah.
And I think here he's able to go through a series of emotions.
Yeah.
So we
I
have him. We have Patrick Stewart
right.
looking like Patrick Stewart from 20 years later too. It's like, did he ever? Was he? Now he's old, but for the longest time, he just never aged, in
No,
my
he was
opinion.
never. He actually was never a young man. What happened is he went from about 14 to like 40.
Came out bald and was just,
Yeah. That was it.
he just never.
That was
I've
it.
never seen a picture of him with hair. I think it would throw me off. I think if I saw a
Yeah.
picture of him with
Yeah. I don't want to see that.
hair.
Definitely don't. But
But
yeah,
I think this.
it.
Oh, go ahead.
I think it reminded looks wise. It reminded me a little bit more of a Quatermass movie. Um,
True.
but I mean, you're absolutely right. It's a British film. Sorry, a British shot film that looks British from Americans. You know, but that
I
I
think
mean, it's you get an E for effort on that, but that's about it. I couldn't connect with it because it was jumping all over the place. And I swear at one point I thought there's going to be horses and Indians. I just know it.
it's like, when is the American military going to come in? When's it going to happen? When's that going to happen? I
Yeah,
I think I think maybe one of the things that for me clicked, and it could be because at the time I was really obviously overdosing on a lot of the Spielberg, Lucas, Indiana Jones,
right,
E.T. Lifeforce has a score that I think matches that style of filmmaking easily through Henry Mancini. It's this huge, sweeping, just amazing orchestral score.
right.
You know, from the guy who brought us the Pink Panther theme of all things.
And yeah, I know. And I'm as impressed with the soundtrack as you are for the same reasons
Right.
because you don't see that or you don't hear that coming out of Mancini. I mean, you just don't, you know.
Yeah. I
And
wonder
yet
what
there it
brought it
is.
out. I wonder if he just was like, you know what? I've never been asked to do a film like this before. And
Maybe.
it just somehow inspired him because he was in his later years at that point, I'm sure, 1985.
Yeah.
So you would think the largest part of his or most inspirational scores had already been done by that point. So to come out with something like that, which I'm kind of surprised had never been purchased for another movie, shockingly,
Right.
because I would steal that music in a heartbeat for a science fiction kind of epic sort of a feel if you
Absolutely.
needed it. The thing that I think another movie also it reminds me of in terms of it could have pulled inspiration from is Under the Skin, a
Yeah.
British film made with Scarlett Johansson, because you have kind of the same idea: an alien species taking a female form
Right.
is able to entrance people without a problem.
Right.
And it's just I think if it had maybe a rewrite or two, kind of make it a little more focused, if you will,
Yeah.
I think it could have worked.
Yeah,
But I think there's no denying the last reel of that movie, the finale of it. Even if you don't care how you got there, you can't deny it is just huge. It's
yeah,
amazing the things happening in that finale. You have all of London burning.
yeah,
You have zombie like creatures, or they are zombies
yeah. They
effectively,
are.
vampire zombies
They're
running
vampire
through the
zombies.
city and attacking people. You have these incredible swirling graphics, for the life force, if you will, going through the city and cutting through people. I mean, just wild stuff.
Yep, yep. It's
And
it's a film hard to like, but hard not to like. In plain words, there's certain kinds of um, kick ass to that movie. There's a certain kind of rebellious directing in that movie, and that's hard not to love. It's just
and when you
I think it was just all over the place, and that's got to be on whoever greenlit the script, if in fact that was the script that Toby followed.
right. I think again, I think Golden Globus were just like, go make it a movie, just but that was the thing. Part of the three picture deal was one of them had to be Chainsaw 2. So I think they were lenient with the other two movies. They're like, do what you want, just make us money, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. I
And
think
unfortunately, Life Force did not make money. It made a total of 7 million domestic dollars, which towards a $25 million production budget, that's rough.
Boobs
And
don't
keep in mind,
sell? What?
yeah. Since when?
confusing boobs don't sell for some
I
reason.
I know
Okay.
I know I put $1,000 into it. No, just kidding.
I think if that movie came out today, though, it would do huge because it is so over the top and insane. People are like, I still want to watch this instead of a Marvel movie. I'm gonna go watch this.
Yeah, yeah.
And how would you like? I mean, how emotionally do you deal with that when you're in the process of making three films, which means he was on to Invaders by the time Life Force is coming out,
Right.
and then it comes out and it bombs, and you're just like, ah, crap. Because at that point, it's his first, advertised failure, if you will,
Yep.
after Poltergeist, because
Yep.
no one really cared about Eaten Alive at that point or anything else. He was still rolling on the energy of Salem's Lot and Poltergeist. Even Funhouse was still a successful movie at that point.
It was. Yeah.
So here they hadn't made their money back.
I just think that the also what went against him was he happened to be doing, as you said, um, Invaders from Mars, which is another science fiction movie. So
Right.
he's got a science fiction movie that's underperforming, and he's working on a science fiction movie. That's got to get to you too.
Oh, absolutely. Now, I think maybe both Cannon and Hooper, maybe they were a little more hopeful with Invaders from Mars because it was designed to be a PG-13 movie,
Right.
and it was something that hadn't been done quite a bit over the years, outside of the Franklin Dracula invasion, of the Body Snatchers. There hadn't, and the thing, there hadn't been a huge slew of remakes like
Right.
today.
Right.
And really, his remake was more of a love letter to the original film, to the point where literally the production design, he was pulling imagery literally from the original 1956 that Invaders came out.
Shoot.
That
I
sounds
I,
about
I
right,
would have
right?
said 57, but whatever. I mean, you've got the right timing.
Hmm. And Invaders from Mars. So, well, let me ask you, because you are obviously a fan of the original Invaders.
Yes.
Why did the remake not work for you, or did it work for you in any way?
Um, the monsters were, the big round monsters with the the feet sticking out and stuff like that.
Right,
That to me just seemed a ludicrous design because it's like
right,
they can't even get out of their own way. And and the general feeling, although it was, there were some great remakes, the general feeling is, why are you doing it? Because it's not going to be as good. And
Right.
so I think that goes against them too. I just was to the point where I thought, you know what, the original said what it wanted to, and I'm good if I don't see it. Now I ended up seeing it, but it was not quite against my will. It's not like I got dragged there, but I was not psyched to be seeing it, and I don't know how much of a dark cloud that put on the movie that it didn't deserve. I don't know.
Right. Now, I very much like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. My first connection with the original is still the remake.
Right.
So I wasn't even aware as a 13-year-old kid that there was a movie called Invaders from Mars prior
Right.
to that.
Yep.
So that probably has a lot to do with the fact that I enjoyed the movie, and we watched it a few months ago.
Yeah.
I still kind of dig the movie. It's got this kind of just Tobe Hooper quirkiness to it, and
Yeah.
it just sort of works for me. Once again, an incredible score, this time by Christopher Young, who would go on to do the Hellraiser theme, Hellraiser score for part one and
Sure.
two.
Yeah. For the first.
And I think it just kind of got me into it. It was kind of an earworm sort of theme, kind of like Lifeforce, the dun 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 dun, which for the longest time, my wife added lyrics to that song. She goes
Oh,
life. She goes Life Force, Life Force. This music is from Life Force.
so it's like
And when
the
she,
Bonanza theme.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Good. You're throwing the history in there and everything else. That's
Which I
great.
only found out Bonanza had a theme with lyrics because of Mystery Science Theater.
Yep.
Yeah, was it? Because was it? I don't. Was it? I don't care if I pick a fight, Bonanza.
Yeah. Well, the truth of the
Yeah.
matter is, and we do have to do a future podcast about this, is that the two places, if you pay attention, that you can learn about all knowledge known to man is
Mhm.
MST3K and Warner Brothers cartoons. You
True.
can find out opera. It's all I know about opera, with the exception of Phantom of the Opera. All I know about opera is from Warner Brothers cartoons. So,
Yeah.
you know, it would probably be a fun thing to do, the influences on, of riff tracks, MST3K, and Warner Brothers cartoons, because it's massive.
MST3K gets a tough rap, and I'm guilty of it sometimes too. Like I know Joe Dante hates Mystery Science with a passion. He just
Hmm.
despises it. When he mentions it on their podcast, you can just hear the hatred coming through the sound waves. And occasionally I'll get upset on the more recent episodes of Riff Tracks or MST3K where they pick on, Sword and the Sorcerer or another movie that I love.
Right.
But overall, I learned a lot about culture from that show as a teenager because
Yep.
I'd want to look up, well, what is that reference? Who is that? I don't get that joke.
Right. Yep.
And then there's some things that you are aware of, and it's a joke out of the blue, and it just leaves you tickled. Like in Mitchell, when he says, "Dude looks like Andy Kaufman," and then when he gets killed, he's all, "Thank you very much." Oh, my buddy Ray and I, oh my God, we were in tears when we heard that one the first time.
Yep.
We were laughing so hard, and my mom came in, and she's just like, "What is wrong with you two?" And we're just like, "He said, thank you very much," and we're in tears. And she's like, "I'm leaving," and she just leaves the room because she doesn't get it.
And
Yeah,
I didn't get it because I don't know who that is. So
I know she just sees me laughing at
but
it,
but
but
the
it's
thing,
great when she does get one, and she does. She gets a fair amount of jokes, and she'll just laugh so hard.
but see, Haggerty and I were in our 40s when we did that Spookies thing, and the girls came in, and we're sitting there, with tears running down our face because we're laughing. So it's really the same, kind of like, holy crap, that makes you laugh. It's like, yeah, pretty much.
yes,
So back to Life Force.
Yes.
The cast for Life Force, very much like Life Force. I'm sorry, for Invaders from Mars, just like Life Force, is pretty eclectic. It's just a really good group of character actors.
Yeah, it's
You have
packed.
Karen. You have Karen Black, who I loved Karen Black in any movie that she did,
Yep. Agreed.
And what is unclear from my research, if it's a bit of nepotism or not, the lead of Invaders from Mars is actually played by her son. Karen Black was married to Kit Carson,
Yeah.
who co-wrote Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So he and Tobe Hooper had some friendship at the time, and maybe that's how. I don't think the kid's horrible, but they could have
No.
probably chosen better for the time period. I think they could have found a better kid, because
Yeah.
sometimes he nails it, but when he doesn't nail it, it's like, oh, that's a miss. That is, Toby said cut. Really? You don't want to do that one more time, Toby? One more.
Well, that's always going to be a problem if you're not getting your best people to do the roles. Look at Romero. You know, he gave Dwayne Jones the lead because he was the best actor. And I don't think you can go wrong that way. And I certainly think giving it to somebody's nephew for the lead is fraught with danger.
I mean, it could have also been they were moving so quickly. I mean, think about it. You shoot in Britain. That had to be an extensive shoot for Lifeforce, just massive.
Yeah,
So you come back to the US and it's like, okay, we're rolling on the next one. He may have had very little downtime in
right.
between each movie, and maybe it just seemed like the right call at the time. Hard
Yeah,
to say.
I mean, I've said
And
the same thing about Stephen Lack in Scanners. He's not, to me, never a really strong actor, and you need a strong actor for Scanners. I mean, absolutely need it.
but
So
I think maybe Toby was also of the opinion, I'm surrounding this kid with really good actors, kind of like they used to do to Arnold Schwarzenegger. But it's like, okay, we're going to put you in this movie, but we're going to surround you with people who can act, and it'll work out. Maybe that's what he thought here, because you have Karen Black, you have Timothy Bottoms,
yeah,
Lorraine Newman,
yeah.
James Karen, Bud Cort, Louise
Anything,
Fletcher.
yeah,
You have a
anything James
phenomenal
Karen is
cast.
in. God,
Now, Louise Fletcher, actually every one of the actors, they understand the assignment. They play just like the perfect archetype from that type of movie. Like Louise Fletcher, she's the angry fucking teacher. She's the teacher you love to hate. She's the pain in the ass, and she does it so well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
yeah,
When she yells at him, I'm gonna get you. It's just, again, David Gardner. I think she's great.
yeah,
I think that I think James Karen plays the perfect 1950s military, colonel,
absolutely.
and he's like, what's it, Gribaldi? his lackey, his assistant, who gets pulled under the sand.
Yep.
Uh, who is the actor's name is escaping me, but he played San Francisco on the Alienation TV series.
Yeah, I
Yeah. And again, maybe it was the
yeah,
music hyped me every time, but when the military raids the hole in the ground and the whole sand starts, turning into like the cyclone and the music's kicking in, just, I don't know, man. I just really overall enjoyed the movie, and I get a lot of the designs of the aliens not working, like their version of a stormtrooper, the two-legged, super chubby sort of creature. Maybe Stan Winston, maybe he was on cocaine during the time too. God bless his soul. And maybe they just wanted something really different. Maybe they were really
oh, they
trying
got
to.
one. They got him.
eh, Maybe they were trying to take a George Lucas Star Wars sort of swing, and it's like, what's
Well,
different? What's interesting?
yeah, but if you think about it, they really took a John Carpenter Dark Star kind of swing because it
It's kind
looks
of like a
it
beach
looks
ball with feet.
exactly. It's like the Big Brother is in.
Yeah,
So if I
that
could
could be.
interrupt for a second,
Yes.
are you talking about George Francisco from Alien
Uh,
Nation?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, well, the running joke, and I can't remember if they ported it over to the TV series, because Alienation is based upon a movie produced by Gale and Hurd that had James Caan and Mandy Patinkin from
That's
Princess Bride.
Yep.
And what happened was they named him when they were registering all the aliens on the spaceship. they were running out of names. So they started fucking with people, and they're like, oh, we're going to call you Sam Francisco. And in the movie, he says, I can't call you San Francisco. I cannot introduce you as San Francisco to people. I'm going to call you George. You got to imagine that in the best James Caan voice, because it's a
So
great
it's
scene.
Mandy. That's who plays Francisco, right?
Right, right. So I don't know if on the series if they carried that joke over, but it was one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Oh, this
Yeah.
is the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's movie and the TV show.
Gotcha.
yeah. But the gentleman from the from Invaders from Mars, he was George on the TV series.
Yep.
I'm looking now. That's what I'm doing.
Eric Pierpoint.
Oh,
Yeah,
there you go.
yeah. Sergeant Major Rinaldi. Rinaldi.
See,
I love that. Karen was so upset too. That's my guy. That's my right hand.
yep. Well, see, the one thing though that differentiates Hooper from, let's say, George Romero, um, in this case, is um, there have been some George Romero movies that I just did not like, start to finish. I didn't even think there were good choices in it, and
Right.
that's not the case with the Golden Globus things from Hooper, because the truth is, each one of those movies, all three, have some kind of little shots of brilliance in them, and that that are very much Tobe Hooper. I mean, no question about it. I just, when you stack them up, when you do the pro and con list kind of thing, it's got a lot going against them. All three of them, in my
I
opinion.
think I think all three of these films from the canon period, because I see what you're saying, but I think in some respects his films are more true to himself than like the later work of Carpenter once he was in the heavy studio system.
Right.
Because at least though it may not be consistent throughout, you can be like, oh yeah, Toby, ooh, and usually the beginning and the finale always seem to be perfect. It's the middle, kind of like he's got the Stephen King problem of the middle of the picture as opposed to the end of the story.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of Carpenter's later work, that whole movie, you're just like, none of this is you. If you're watching The Village of the Damned, you're like, John, aside from your music, which is even, lackluster here, there's nothing of you in this movie. There's
Right.
none of your themes. There's none of your ideology. There's none, just imagery. There's nothing there that really feels like you in the long run. Where again, though inconsistent, at least through a movie like Invaders from Mars, or for me, it's not inconsistent as much as for you. Uh, I think there's just a lot to love in that movie. Even the photography of the film is really unique, and that was Daniel Pearl. You got
Yeah.
to work with him a second time there.
Yep. Yep.
So you have the DP from Chainsaw on it, and I think he was having fun during this time. I don't hear any stories of
Yeah.
stress or just unpleasantness while making any of these films.
And you would
And I think
think
here,
it would be. You would think that these would be the movies you'd hear about.
oh
So
yeah, when you're doing
yeah.
three
So
movies back to back,
yeah. People say good morning to you, and it's like, fuck you. I mean, it's like, it just gets to the point where it becomes so heavy because you're trying to fight the clock and inevitably losing.
right?
And
See, and
and
I
you
think,
go ahead. I'm
oh, go
sorry.
ahead.
No,
No, no,
no.
no, go ahead. No,
What
after you.
what happens is, you in a normal schedule, you run 2 days over, and okay, I mean, yeah, the studio heads probably aren't going to be thrilled, but okay, it's 2 days. But when you're doing what Toby did with these three movies, you not only add two movies, you subtract, I mean, 2 days, you subtract 2 days from the next production. So you're already in the lurch. It's like, oh shit.
Yeah, you're
So
gonna have to sacrifice something to make up for the losses of the
right.
previous.
So
No,
in essence, it's two negatives. It took you 2 days longer, and you lost 2 days. So it's, you know, I can imagine the pressure must be nuts when you're doing a
Yeah.
deal like that.
Yeah. See, and I think here again, I think he was probably having fun because one, he's retelling a film that he grew up with as a kid and enjoyed. And oh, and I was wrong, by the way. Yeah, it was 1953 that the original Invaders came
Okay.
out.
Wow.
But but then he
Oh,
was working with James Karen, who he enjoyed working with on Poltergeist. He gets Daniel Pearl back. So again, I think that's probably the coolest thing about this period is I think he was just having a blast
yeah.
uh, because here he was thinking, in all likelihood, am I going to work again? What circumstances are I going to have to work under? Am I going to end up in another Spielberg situation? And here he was really just kind of left to his own devices.
Right.
But of course, to be left to his own devices, he had to make that one agreement, and that was to do Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which he had flirted with back in after a year or two after the release of the original, but never really did anything with it. John Milius, he had joined with John Milius either for conversations or an actual rough draft for a sequel called Beyond the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or Beyond the Valley of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, calling back to Valley of the Dolls and its success.
Yeah.
But nothing ever happened with that. And I
Which is
don't
a
think he had
shame.
anything on paper. Oh, I would have loved to seen
So
John
would I,
Milius.
in a
Oh my
heartbeat.
God, the writer of Apocalypse Now writing a Chainsaw Massacre film. Oh Jesus, that would
Yeah.
have been amazing.
Yeah.
Because Milius, he was full of piss and vinegar at that time, man. He was just unleashing anything he wrote in between Conan the Barbarian, Big Wednesday, just all of his work during that time was
Yeah.
just stellar. So to see him work with Hooper, and they were both so on different sides of the fence because you have Toby, who was definitively a flower child. He was definitely a hippie type. And then you have John Milius, who's about as conservative as you can fucking get. You know, he's the guy who walked into meetings with a gun on his hip, freaking people out.
Yeah.
So to imagine them working together on a Chainsaw Massacre sequel, which could obviously talk about the political agendas of the time and the country as a whole. I would have, yeah, that would have been wild.
Yeah. Well,
But
with Milius walking around with a gun, it just shows me one thing:
hmm,
tiny dick.
what's it?
It's like,
I don't,
serious.
but I
I mean,
love his
seriously, you need that
personality
shit
though.
here?
I
No,
think
he's
I
definitely
picture
one of a
him more
kind.
like I picture him like we were watching another 48 Hours the other day,
Yeah.
and the biker characters in that. I had mentioned it to Callie. I really like how the bikers were not like racist bastards
Right.
because they could have easily, when they're dealing with the Iceman's middleman
Hmm.
at the bar, it could when he says you people don't understand what it was like, he's not referring to his race
Right.
because he goes into a speech about how we used to be free and we could just get our own land and the government wouldn't take it. It was a different type of rebel, if you will. Because if you wrote that today, they would go with the obvious cliche of you people, meaning something entirely different. And that's kind of what I equate John Milius to. He was just kind of, I think he would have been one of those guys like doing the race and far and away to get their own land.
Yeah.
He would be that type of guy, or he'd be a marshal or something. And but going back to what I was saying, yeah, I think him and Toby working on something would have been fantastic. But he had
I do
nothing
too.
to work from when they had to write part two. That was under a time issue by then. It was the final picture of the deal. They had come off Invaders and Lifeforce, so they had to move really quick. And that's when he brought Kit Carson on,
Right.
who was just known to be a very prolific and just quick writer. Apparently, he carried his own portable typewriter with him like wherever he went. So he didn't
Yeah.
write notes. He would just so if he was at a
Yep.
coffee shop, that's what you would hear more than likely.
Yep.
And Chainsaw 2, depending on the interviews that you read, did not have a complete script when it went into production, which is something that happened
Yeah.
in later Hollywood, not so much during this time. And the actors, it was notorious stories about the actors getting pages the same day or, oh, remember that thing we wrote? We rewrote it. You got, these are the new pages.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
was not unheard of for that to happen.
Yeah. And I also think that if this is going to sound weird, but that's okay. Why not? I think if Texas Chainsaw had a different decade,
Mhm.
it would have been better too. Because to me, the '80s are so shiny that I understand it was the family now trying to grow up in this new America with shiny stuff and everything. It didn't click. Um, where I think if it had been late '70s or early '90s even, I think it would have been a different animal. I may be
See,
wrong, but
no, I agree in terms of the story that's ultimately told. I think maybe Carson wasn't the best guy to work with Hooper, because my impressions of Hooper as a writer is he always worked with someone,
right,
and I think he was the type of guy who spent most of the time describing what he wanted. So almost like the type of relationship a Spielberg or Lucas would have with a writer, but they would never take credit for anything. Now I think Hooper probably did a little more writing than just simply sitting back with puffing on a cigar or anything.
right,
But I really feel that was the biggest part of what he brought to the table in terms of a writing duo. And maybe Carson, unlike a Bill Lancaster who had never written horror but it did an amazing job for Carpenter on that script,
mm-hmm,
maybe Carson, maybe he wasn't the guy, because undoubtedly he was a wonderful writer. I mean, he wrote the remake to Breathless, which I love the remake more than the original film. He wrote Paris, Texas, which is
yeah,
really good. Running on Empty, he did a lot of really great stuff and contributed to a lot of great screenplays, even as the main writer or a ghost writer. He even wrote for Miami Vice an episode,
yeah,
and so he was a good writer, undoubtedly. But maybe the genre and the things that Hooper was trying to tell, maybe he just wasn't the guy.
quite possibly, yeah,
Of course, I don't know who you would go to for that necessarily, but maybe it just wasn't him, because
right,
I do feel that Hooper was very much like the themes and metaphors he injected into the original. I think he was trying to say something about 80s culture, yuppie
mm-hmm,
culture, the rich, eating the poor. I think a lot of these concepts were there,
right.
just not
Followed
necessarily.
through. Yeah, they never
Right.
followed through with it. Because
Right.
yes, the beginning on the bridge, with the yuppies in the car is very much what you're saying. A great example of what you're saying. They're you got yuppies in the car, and let's just go f them up.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Because the guys driving that car are the ones who are going to go on to run Apple.
yeah, right, exactly.
That's who those douches are, pretty much.
Yeah,
And this is the one instance where, throughout the canon period, that Hooper did start to feel not necessarily his reins being pulled back by Golan and Globus, but there were demands of what a horror film should be. They didn't argue with him on Lifeforce and Invaders from Mars, because I think they felt, oh no, those movies are representative of what our audience is going to go see these movies for.
right,
But Chainsaw, Golden was always, infamously, it's about the scare. People won't be scared. They want to see the monster. And there was a lot going on in that original version of Chainsaw 2, including the relationships of the characters.
right.
The Dennis Hopper character of Lefty, who is connected to Sally and Franklin from the original film,
Mm-hmm.
he has a whole bunch of baggage from that. That's why he's doing what he's doing. That's why he's chasing the Sawyer family. He's got another issue, because in the original film, in the original script, the DJ of Stretch, played so wonderfully by Carolyn Williams, that's his daughter. So you had a whole series
Right,
of like dramatic little bits going throughout the film that they had to keep pulling back on, because Canon's like, that's not a scary movie. It's not a
right,
horror movie. It's not Chainsaw 1. And I think Hooper the entire time had kind of pressed upon them, it's a sequel, but it's not going to be cut from the same cloth. it's its own thing.
Right. And I was ready to experience cut from the same cloth. I'll admit to it. I wanted it to be as insane looking as the first one.
Right.
We've always talked about the camera looks like it was used by a family member. That somebody insane was on camera.
And you're like, now they're using dollies and steady cams and what's
Exactly.
going
It's
on?
like, really? Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, we could guess till the end of time. I wish it had been a different movie, but I completely understand people liking it because there's a lot to like there.
See, I think one of my favorite parts of the movie, even as a kid, was Dennis Hopper.
Oh yeah.
He's just so fucking great as that character, and he plays it big. They dress him big. Everything about his performance is big. I just love that. I love the response to him when he shows up at the murder scene of the two
Hmm.
douches in the car. And I just love when he goes off and the one cop's like, "Remember the Alamo, big boy." I love that. So, and I just Hopper's just he for a guy who had just come out of rehab, nobody wanted to work with him. He brings the performance. There's no moment in that film where I think he's phoning it in. I don't feel that he's like I'm taking a step down from what I used to do and what I was
Right.
known for. And there's just so many elements that I just really love of the character. And then Stretch. Oh my god. Okay. All right. Well, first of all, we already know, yes, little Ricky had a crush on Caroline Williams, but she just plays the character. Her southern draw and everything is just a great character. I love when she's like, hang up, hang up, hang up. Just the way, just such a crazy performance.
Yep.
And the whole backbone of that movie, for the most part, is on her.
Yes.
Even when we go to Lefty and he has his standalone scenes buying the chainsaws, which is a great scene. I love that shit. I love he walks into a place that strictly sells chainsaws, which looks like a building owned by the chainsaw family.
Right.
But he doesn't say a word. He goes in, he's looking around. The old guy behind the counter is like, what can I do you for? And he's just looking and he's looking, and he takes three chainsaws, two little ones and this big honking one. He takes them outside. He leaves the money for the guy.
Yeah.
Doesn't ask how much it is.
Yep.
He leaves what, from my memory, it looks like at least a couple grand in front of him. And he goes outside, and the guy's like, "Hey, there's gas in him if you want to try him out." And it's just such a wonderful scene.
Right.
But the rest of the movie, you're with Stretch.
Yeah.
You're with her going to their lair. Everything with with her finding um, LJ, who such a great character. I love it. I made you a little fry house. I love that scene. That's what I'm saying. There's so many great moments. Now,
And I'm not
um,
arguing. I completely agree. But it's the movie as a whole that I have,
right.
you know, just trouble with.
No, no, no. I got you. I got you. But speaking of LJ, one of the sad parts about that is that gentleman, Lou Perry, was a actor and producer and filmmaker. He was part of that Texas independent scene that we talked about in Austin. So he did a lot of work over the years, and he had a part in getting the original Chainsaw Massacre to Laserdisc. So he owned companies, he did a lot, and sadly, kind of like at this recording, as of this recording, we learned yesterday that Gene Hackman passed away in what seems to be very bizarre um, terms, if you will. Lou Perry unfortunately died like a horror movie. He came home one night from work of some kind, and someone had broken into his house looking for drugs or things they could steal for drugs, and they killed him,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
they were still there.
Yeah, and it's just really sad that he went out that way.
Yeah.
But I love his character so much, and the scene where she finds him with his face cut off because Leatherface gives it to Stretch as a gift earlier in the movie. The scene with him helping her escape is so wonderful because he's skinned on one side of his body and his face, and he's got this knife and he's trying to cut her ropes, and it's so great. He's coming down in like a stabbing
Right.
fashion.
Yeah.
And I remember my mom was like, she was recounting when she saw it in the theater. She's like, I thought he was going to stab her in the back by accident. And he finally hits the ropes and everything. But it's a great scene.
Right.
And I was listening to the commentary with Hooper, and apparently Perryman was all on board. He's like, I can do the whole scene naked if you want. And Toby's like, no, that's all right. You can keep your boxers
No.
on.
No.
We
No.
don't do.
No.
We're probably not going to get into theaters, but yeah, let's not do that. Let's go ahead and let's keep your drawers on, please. Which I think is so funny.
Yeah, that is.
And I think over the years, Chainsaw 2, very much like Lifeforce and very much like Invaders from Mars, it definitely gained a following. It is a very divisive film, but I think the more sequels came out, like everything after part 3, I think a lot of folks go back to part 2 and go, really, it's not that bad compared to uh, Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation or Texas Chainsaw 3D.
Right.
When you're sitting in the theater and you hear lines like "Get 'em, cuz,"
Yeah.
as as they're excited to see Leatherface sort of get on their side, I'm like, yeah. You go back in part 2 and go, okay, well at least it's a Chainsaw Massacre movie, definitely.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing of part 2 that people revisit it for is Bill Moseley, who that was the first time he ended up on everybody's radar.
Yeah.
And of course they would end up in Night of the Living Dead and so many other great, the Rob Zombie films, just great work. And he is probably the one part of the film that you can really see Hooper trying to implement some social commentary and political commentary of the time. The character being a Vietnam vet, the fact that you get the idea that his disability funds help pay for the renovations on the barbecue part of the
Yeah.
family, and which is now a successful company.
Of course.
And he spends most of the time, referring to Vietnam or just things in terms of the political mindsets of the period.
Right.
And again, maybe with another writer, maybe they would have been able to expound on that more to where it would feel more timely in
Hmm.
some respects.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever told you when I had to go to Connecticut to meet him. Um, uh, every time he was down anywhere around where I am, it would end up getting canceled or storm, hurricane, this, that, and the other thing. Um, I went to Connecticut, met him, stood in line for the, whatever it was. I think part of me still thinks I'm in line. And and when when I got up to the table, I
Mhm.
looked over and there was a big stack compared to everything else, a big stack of Night of the Living Dead. And that's what I wanted. And of course, there's this little stack of Chop Top because that's what everybody else wanted. And I put it down in front of him, and he said, "Thank God somebody wants this one." And we got into a whole talk about how much he loved Night of the Living Dead, the remake,
Right.
and obviously, and how he is very surprised at times that nobody mentions it. And so anyway, he was wearing a Famous Monsters shirt, and I certainly brought up the fact that I wrote for them. And when all was said and done, I said, "What do I owe you?" And he says, "Go ahead." And it was very nice of him. But yeah, no one at the table was biting for the Night of the Living Dead, and I was actually worried that they wouldn't have a shot from it, but they did have that one shot. But no, I mean, he's very much surprised that people sometimes think that the only thing he did was Texas Chainsaw 2.
I was gonna say that shows you how much he loved that performance, because you're not a pretty girl and you're not a little kid, and he gave you an autograph for free.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but Moseley, and I don't know if I ever recounted this story to you, sweetheart, the way he got the job was he was a fan. Bill Moseley was a fan of the original Chainsaw Massacre, and very much like, again, creative entities in Austin. If you couldn't be in someone's movie, you would make your own movie. And he made a short film called The Texas Chainsaw Manicure, where effectively
Oh,
he was reprising The Hitchhiker from the original movie.
that's great.
And somehow that tape, someone told Tobe Hooper about it, because this is back in the day. You have no internet, so tapes just float around. And they're like, you got to see this guy. And he watched it and he loved it. He's like, I need to meet this guy. And he offered it to him based upon that. He didn't even have to audition, because he was like, well, if you can do that, then obviously you can do Chop Top.
Yep.
And that's how he got the role,
I had
which I
not
think is
heard
fun.
that story.
That is
I
wonderful.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah,
Absolutely great.
one of the documentaries, I believe it's either on the Blu-ray or the DVD, has a short excerpt from it, and it's pretty hilarious.
Oh,
Actually,
okay.
it's pretty wild. Yeah, it's worth checking out.
The Texas
Absolutely.
Chainsaw Manicure.
Mhm.
That's kind of brilliant.
It is.
I know. In terms of when you're thinking about a parody, it's like, what's it going to be? And then it's like, of course, Rich has got all the perverted titles in his head, but somewhere Bill Moseley is like, what's the opposite of a massacre? Hey, manicure. Yeah, that'll work, and I'll have it take place in a beauty salon. That's the ticket. That's what I'm gonna do.
God, that's great.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's wonderful. But Chainsaw 2 comes out, and it's actually, in relation to its budget, the most successful of the three movies.
I can see that.
Life Force was 25 million, only brought in 12. Invaders was made for 7, barely made 4, or 12 rather, and barely made 4. And then Chainsaw Massacre was made for 4.6, which is a crazy budget when you think about it compared to the original movie, obviously. But that actually made 8 million domestically, and by the time you factor in overseas, probably came closer to 12.
Right.
So out of the three films, Chainsaw is the only one that keeps him financially viable. But Canon does not necessarily give up on him at that point. They still want to work with him on other projects.
Right.
And this was post Lifeforce. So at one point, he's attached to King Solomon's Mines, which at that time was actually being remade with Terry Savalas of all people as Richard Quartermain, or Alan Quartermain, which is really funny to me. Finally, he left the project, very much like projects in the early part of the 80s, and that was taken over by J. Lee Thompson, a recurrent filmmaker for Canon. Worked a
Ten,
lot on a lot of Charles Bronson films.
yeah,
Uh,
I think 10 to Midnight.
yeah, well, I love 10 to Midnight.
Yeah,
That definitely has to be in our
absolutely.
slasher but not slasher movie kind of a thing.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Because
that's a great little movie.
oh yeah,
It
definitely.
doesn't, I mean, it doesn't change the course of history of movies, but it's kind of a neat little movie. I really
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
and I think it was Canon saying, "Okay, horror movie make money, Charlie Bronson movie make money. What do we do? We're gonna put them together."
There you go.
It's kind of like when Silent Range happened. They were like, "What if you took Halloween and mixed it with a Chuck Norris movie? Or better yet, we'll get Chuck Norris in the movie. You get
Yep.
Silent Rage is what you get." Which
Silent
is still
Rage.
that could go in that same movie, in the same episode. Actually, those are two movies to talk about right there.
Yep, you're right.
At one point, Hooper was actually going to do a Pinocchio futuristic remake called Pinocchio the Robot.
Okay. I thought it was Pinocchio in Outer Space because I've heard that batted around, but I don't remember where.
Now, what would have been interesting about that is that it would have been another collaboration with Dan O'Bannon, because Dan O'Bannon and Don Jacoby wrote, who were a writing duo and wrote the original Alien together. they did the screenplay for Invaders from Mars,
Yeah.
and I believe some uncredited rewrites on Lifeforce. So if Pinocchio the Robot had actually happened, that would have been a second film they actually worked on together.
Yeah.
And maybe at that point we would have seen a carryover of themes and writers who could pull in the things that Hooper wanted to say. But the other crazy part about Pinocchio the Robot was Geppetto was going to be played by Lee Marvin, which I don't know if I can see that,
I can't.
because Lee Marvin voice, I'd be like, I just don't know. It's like,
Yeah.
how would that work? He's supposed to be kind old Geppetto. I can't see him being kindly in any way.
Yeah.
Abusive Geppetto, maybe.
There you go. There you go. It's Geppetto. Uh-oh.
It's Geppetto. It's Geppetto who uses Pinocchio to rob banks.
Right,
Maybe
exactly.
I could see that happen, but I don't know if I could see that.
Yeah,
But
that's a great choice. I would love to have seen that play out.
well,
Wow.
what was really funny was at one point Cannon was going to make a movie called The Golem
Yeah.
with Charles Bronson, and
Damn.
I don't know the details of that movie. I'm like, wait, was it a period piece? Is he the
Right.
Golem?
Yeah. Wow.
It's like I don't.
Wow.
I don't. I couldn't see that. It's like I get revenge for people. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know how that would work. Do guns make you nervous? No, but the Golem does.
Right.
I don't know.
That's funny. Holy crap.
But the most highbrow project that Hooper was attached to, and he wasn't the first filmmaker to get attached to it, was Spider-Man. Because at this point in time, Marvel had pretty much nearly gone bankrupt.
Right.
So they were selling out licensing to whatever they could. That's why there were so many animated series in
Yeah.
the 80s through, numerous networks. It's because Marvel's like, hey, we need influx of cash. Well, Canon was able to strike a deal for Captain America and Spider-Man. And Tobe
Right.
Hooper was the first person they really approached. It's like, hey, you want to do Spider-Man? Now, I cannot believe this story because, well, on one hand, it's cute, but I can't see him being this uneducated. But apparently, Golan and Globus thought Spider-Man was a horror character because
Okay.
Spider-Man, and apparently the script that Hooper was approached with literally had Peter Parker turning into a spider creature.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't find any drafts of that. Maybe there are. I have a screenwriting buddy who's a collector of them. I'll have to check with him. Uh, I just have a hard time being Golden Globus thinking that that's what Spider-Man was, because
Right.
it was such an American icon. It was a piece of pop culture, just like Superman. And if they were going to purchase this along with Captain America, it seems like they would know who Spider-Man is.
Absolutely.
I mean, if nothing else, because Spider-Man and Captain America ended up in the same books occasionally.
Right.
So I don't know if that's just a thing of Hollywood lore or not. But
Well, we
Hooper
may never
was,
find out. I don't know. I hadn't heard that, but geez, I don't know.
yeah, but Hooper was attached to that for about a year, maybe 2 years during this
That's a
time.
long time, man.
Well, because they were trying to figure out the budget at this
Right.
point. Canon's budget started to get really erratic, obviously, because they were working so quickly and the movies were coming up so fast,
Yep.
and the rewards were not coming in quick enough. They were not making enough money on each movie. So for every Stallone over the top or Cobra that would go out and make them a lot of money, they would end up losing money on 4 other movies.
Right.
So it was a rough time for that studio. And the amazing thing is, the thing that Canon got in trouble for, just quick verge, was that they were selling the movies to the open market before the movies were made. So they would put an ad out, kind of like the thing with Charles Bronson. It'll be a very generic poster. Charles Bronson, the Golem. Terror has a gun, and it comes out, October of whatever year, and they would sell it to all the open markets if they could, and they would use that money to make the movie.
Right.
And I think this is where a lot of racism came in with Golan and Globus. I think American studios were like, you're shady. This is not how we do things in Hollywood. Well, guess what? They were actually the forerunners of the fucking way Hollywood makes their movies now.
Right.
When
Absolutely.
when when Marvel goes to make Captain America 4, they are not using a dime of their own money.
Right.
They go to a bank and they get a loan.
Hmm.
It's never coming out of their money. It's not coming at Disney doesn't make movies with their money. They make it with other people's money.
Right.
Now they may have, rather large payback sums, but they don't do anything out of their own pocket. And Canon was pegged for that, and it was, it was very unnecessary, the hate that I think those two men got, because they really helped to create a way of, financially anyways, of filmmaking that's followed through to this day.
Yeah.
And they had an idea of marketing that people like Charlie Band went with. How many times did Charlie Band make a movie based upon an idea and a poster?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like, I'm gonna make a movie called Doll Man, and basically the poster is a ripoff of The Incredible Shrinking Man, and then he gives it to a writer and director, and it's like, okay, go do your thing. But all
Yeah.
we have is this. You'll figure it out. And 9 times out of 10, the movies came out the entire opposite of what the poster was. I
Right.
mean, Doll Man in the hands of Albert Pune became the story about a cop from another planet, played by Tim Thomerson.
Yeah.
where if you look at the original Dollman poster, it's a guy next to a sewing spool with a needle, and he's fending off a giant spider.
Gee,
So,
where have I seen that before?
exactly.
Um, well, I I think or let's say I've always wondered about what Golden Globus was doing as opposed to what Corman had been doing forever.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
that far apart. I mean, it really isn't. They're selling a concept uh, of a finished, in essence, a finished movie, and yeah, Corman was doing basically the same thing. He just wasn't saying that the movie was finished.
And Roger always made money.
Oh God, yeah,
That was the other distinction. He never lost money. He even joked the one movie he lost money on is when he tried to say something, when he tried to do a picture of the political climate with William Shatner called The Intruder. Brilliant movie. Shatner's eerie as hell as the racist character in it,
yeah,
but made no money for his studio at all. And that's where Golan and Globus, unfortunately, they wanted to make movies. They love movies, but they were just moving so fast. There was, again, just no time to
right.
ensure that each movie was going to bring its budget back. I mean, think about it. They invested over $45 million into Hooper's 3 movies. I mean,
That's a good
that
chunk.
was absolutely, when you were thinking, I mean, think about it. The original Batman was made for $40 million.
Yeah, and
That's a drop in the bucket by
yeah,
today's standards, but at
right.
that time,
But the
that was
original
huge.
Batman is a big movie. I mean,
Yeah. Oh,
every
absolutely.
every part of it, and it's a beautiful movie, and every penny of it is on the screen. But I mean, geez, it, it's truly unbelievable what Golden Globus did. Um, Unfortunately for them, you can only keep all those plates spinning in the air for a few minutes, and then the second you lose one, you basically lose them all.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens, and that's what happened to them. So all these other additional projects that Hooper was attached to, because at the time it was Canon was his steady employer, all that stuff went to the wayside.
Yeah, and I understand it to a point because I can't work like that. I mean,
Mhm.
I have to compartmentalize uh, my thinking if I'm working on more than one project at the same time. I kind of have to put one of them away in a box
Mhm.
almost to start on the next one. Um, and I would have lost my mind in that kind of situation because everything depends on everything else. It's like, holy shit, it, it's really scary. I just don't think like that.
See, that's funny because I think, or at least I feel, on a creative level, I I can bounce between a couple of things because we used to. And again, I
Right.
know this is the equivalent. We joked about it before, like when we have Gary on the show or we get Tom or someone on the show and you guys start waxing about your period of filmmaking, I'm going to be Brody with my appendix scar. Because you were talking about the whole idea of being behind schedule, and it's
Yeah.
like so that would be you looking at me going, Rick, what? Because you lost time, right? When you didn't shoot everything in the same day. It was like
Yep.
we had a lot of videotape. We just kept shooting,
Yeah.
and we shot again the next day. And he's like, "That's what it'll be. It'll be just like." But as far as that goes, we did. It wasn't uncommon for me to write 3 different things at the same time,
Yeah.
and they were entire opposite kind of storylines.
Well, that's the
So
thing. It did seem a little bit um, busy that time, of my career, but it was still only one project.
right.
So it was easy for me to focus. I'm always in, let's say, Alf mode, or I'm always in Are You Afraid of the Dark mode. I don't have to shift out of that. If I did, I'm not that sure how I would have done.
Now, when you were writing projects, Complete Verge, the Russo book I told you about, the John Russo book,
Yeah,
one of the things he talks about in there is his form of writing, his method, if you will. And what he did was he would keep file folders, even if it was just an idea that he kind of barely had
one line.
a
Yeah,
concept,
one
he would
line.
just take
Yeah,
the folder and he would throw it in the folder and then he would go back to it. And if he saw something on the news or a newspaper clipping, he's like, "Ooh, that would be really good for that idea I came up with a few months ago."
yeah.
And he would throw it in there and then he would revisit the folders. And then he would be like, "Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I got enough. I know what I can do with this now."
If
And
I'm not mistaken, he would do the folder the first of every month. He would go through all of them. Might
yeah,
just be fast, but he would, okay, okay, wait a minute, hold on. I know what I can marry this to. So yeah,
did you have a method like that? Or what
yes,
was your method? Okay.
yeah, it wasn't as organized though as folders and things like that, and I can see where that would have helped. Mine was a spiral notebook, five subject spiral notebook, but because I didn't take that organization care of it, it
Hmm.
could be on the idea I'm looking for could be on like the 200th page, but there's no marking there, so I'm flipping through five subject spiral books, which must have like, I don't know, 400 pages or something like that, looking for a snippet like this. So yes, I had something like that, but it
So
was,
you're basically like, I could start writing this right now, but I can't remember for the life of me what was my lead character's name. And it's all the
yep,
way in like the back of the notebook somewhere. You're
yep,
just like, it was over.
exactly. So yeah, the only name that I wrote that I was able to keep in my mind was, for whatever reason, Atlas Trent.
That's a good name.
It
That
is.
is a good name.
It
Don't
is.
you love it when you come up with a name and you're just like, oh God, now if I can just put it to something, it's
Well,
got to go somewhere.
you know what the great part is? I own
Hmm.
it again. See,
Oh, nice.
I had
Because of
done it.
the
I had I had done it for someone because they really wanted to do this kind of in like Flint kind of
Mhm.
thing. And it very much is that. I mean, you walk into this guy's bedroom and the entire wall is televisions, all different size, but they fit together almost like a jigsaw puzzle. And that's the way
Mhm.
he could keep. So let's say there's 600 screens on there. That's the way he'd keep track of what's going on in the world. you
That's
know
cool.
no internet, just, and somehow he could shut out everything else and concentrate on one thing, you know.
Right.
And anyway, so he had a long option. This guy had a 7 year maybe option.
Wow,
um,
Oh,
that's
wow.
long.
but again, I'm getting paid for 7 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So and it came and went, and I own them again. So yeah, so if
And
we
was
want to
that
do Atlas Trent, let's do it. You know,
was that a treatment or a full script? What was that?
it was a treatment and the first third of the script,
Oh, nice.
but they
Yeah, we
wanted
gotta talk
every
about that off
page, and
air.
it wasn't like a mishmash of stuff. It was
Mm.
page 1 through whatever, 40 or 80, but there wasn't anything missing. So you can read that and decide pretty much, okay, so this is the way it's going to go.
It's
And
funny, my daughter and I were just talking about names because
mhm,
she's working on 2 projects right now, or one morphed into another, and it's really cute talking to your little creative girl and hearing her stresses about, plot elements and
right,
cohesive storylines, and the thing with names came up. So she kept saying, "Is that a good name? I think that's a good name." And I started telling her, it's like, "Oh, no, it's a wonderful name." And I said, "You're probably gonna get married to a name sometimes. Like, if you don't get to use it the way you want to, you're gonna use it again somewhere." Like,
right,
I have 2 names that follow me like demons in the night.
right.
It's, Johansson Kane and Kenton Davies. And Johansson
Wow,
Kane was a government assassin kind of inspired by, like, The Shop from Stephen King books,
right,
and he popped up in a comic book that I had created with a friend of mine called Outsiders, and he's a government assassin. And I'm like, oh, I love that name. And it ended up popping up in 2 other projects. And then he popped up in the new footage for Hard Edge, where he plays one of the Pearl officers. So
nice,
he's like my Randall Flagg. He keeps coming up. And then Kenton Davies, which is a cop written for my buddy who passed away. We were going to do a film called Vanguard Cowboy, which was meant to be like our artsy fartsy, cop addicted to drugs movie.
yeah.
Um, he was called Kenton Davies there, and then Kenton Davies popped up here as one of the Pearl officers. So sometimes you just get a name, and it's like until you get to use that name the way you want to, you're just going to keep throwing it out there.
Oh, absolutely.
Albert Pune did it with the name Brick Bardo, which
That's great,
yeah, it's
Brick.
this crazy name, Brick Bardo,
That's
and
great.
it
Hey,
was so
Ma, why don't
funny.
we call him Brick? Yeah,
I know,
Who
and the
want-
funny part
who
was
doesn't
I
want to be
didn't pick
named
up
that?
on it.
yeah,
I didn't pick up on it until later because I was a fan of his movies. But then after Doll Man, I decided, you know what, I want to revisit his old stuff. And he did a lot of kickboxing movies, a lot of action movies. Yeah,
right.
he used Brick Bardo 2 other times in 2 other movies, and it's just so funny that it's like, well, he found a home for it. Tim Thomerson, tiny super cop from another planet. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay. He
he's
will forever be Brick Bardo now.
wow. That's great.
It kind of makes you wonder, like, if Indiana Jones hadn't kicked, for Lucas, maybe it's like
Yeah,
if Indiana ended up anywhere in a Star Wars movie or something.
that would be
I'm
funny. Holy
I'm Indiana Jones, pilot of the Millennium Falcon. No, that
yeah,
doesn't sound right. I gotta create a different name there. But
it's his
Indiana
Walter
Jones, I'm gonna use
Paisley.
it somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Wilford Paisley.
Oh God.
All right, man. So at this point in our Tobe Hooper story, this would be the equivalent of Boogie Nights, which, if any of our people out there, if you're just horror obsessed, you really do need to watch all movies. And if you haven't seen a movie called Boogie Nights, you really need to see it. It's probably like it's P.T. Anderson's best film, in my opinion. Such a good movie. But in that picture, you have the beginnings of the adult film industry. Then you follow it through its peak of, oh, everything's going great. We're doing all this amazing stuff. And then everything hits the skids when home video takes over and everything goes to shit. Well, at this point in our conversation, I think it's safe to say that we should do just one more episode about good old Toby, because I just like breaking the record of a trilogy of talking about him. And there's actually a lot that I want to talk about for when everything hits the skids. So we're in that third part of Boogie Nights, and that's what I think we should do the next episode on. So looking back at the
Okay.
canon years, what what is your takeaway of the canon years, Rich? And what do you want to say about Toby's canon years?
I will say that I think you are 100% right that he was having a good time. And I also think he possibly thought, you know what, I deserve a good time after X amount of because everything was everything prior to that was like giving birth. I mean, it's like really, who wants to go through that to for to make a movie? You're sitting there like passing a watermelon, out of your body just to make a movie, really? So I think he was having a ball, and if that's the case, as far as I'm concerned, I'm good with those years. I
I look at it as I look at it differently through a different lens because again, it's where our age bracket does come in. A lot of my connections to actually two of the connections to his movies, both Invaders and Chainsaw,
yeah
came from me not seeing the original Chainsaw, as you recall me telling you, and the fact that I had never seen Invaders from Mars. So
yeah
I saw it from a different lens, and I think it was a great time for him, just to have fun making movies again.
yeah
I think it was a worthwhile experiment to see what happens when you try to make three movies on a budget of $45 million, one after the other.
I mean, it's laughable. It
I,
really
I
is.
but I think in a weird way, I think it was still successful in terms of the movies are not hot messes.
Right.
You don't watch Lifeforce going, what is fucking happening in this movie again?
I don't know.
Who
I
went
do.
where?
That's
No,
the
well,
way.
to me, it's
That's the
all
way
pretty
I
clear
watch
what's happening.
it.
Okay, but even Invaders, it's pretty straightforward. We don't get
Yes.
lost and confused like we do in some mega budget movies
Right.
nowadays that have had 12 writers. And I think they all kind of stake a claim in the world of the genres they're from.
Yeah.
I really feel that Life Force had to inspire both Under the Skin and Species. I just have a hard time believing that someone didn't look at it. Just like Without Warning, I cannot
Yeah.
believe the writers of Predator did not see that movie because it's the
Right.
same fucking movie.
Right.
A bunch of hunters isolated in the woods with an alien who comes to Earth literally to hunt,
Right.
who has a weapon that he throws through the air. It's like, come on, man.
Isn't
Yeah,
that
I
one we
believe
should
that.
go?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. And yeah, there and you have big actors in that movie. You have a young David Caruso, you got Martin
Hmm.
Landau. It's like a wonderful cast. But I think yes, there are times that the creative ether, I think there's just something all of us are tapping into. And yeah, we may come up with the same concept. But
Right.
when you're talking so many key points, I'm like, oh, come on, man. And for Life Force, I just keep thinking people saw that movie, and no matter how much they hated it, no matter how much they picked on it, I could see a creative person, I could see a writer going, I need an idea for a movie. Hey, Species, I think I can sell that.
Right. Wow.
I think Invaders still has a lot of great stuff. I just think it's an interesting period of his work, and probably the last period of his work that we're going to look at, to where I feel he was given everything he needed in
Right.
terms of time, creativity, money, the people he chose to work with. I don't think you see that in the final half of his career.
No. No, you don't.
I really don't. You see a lot of producers sticking there when in it shouldn't be. I think probably the closest he gets to creativity that we'll talk about down the line is his work on Masters of Horror,
Yeah.
which actually became the last place a lot of filmmakers have been able to have complete carte blanche on what they wanted to do.
Right.
And I think the three films he did for Canon helped to uh, strengthen
Right.
the legend of Tobe Hooper, if you will.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
and I and I look forward to talking about even the down times, and there's quite a few of them. We're not going to get extensive because there's not much to say because the
Right.
mangler's the mangler and crocodile is crocodile. There's not a whole lot you can pull out there.
Right. But you do learn much more from his failures than you do from his successes. So I think there's going to be stuff for us to learn.
I
I think it's
agree.
going to, I'm very excited about the third one.
Third installation.
So I have a question though for our producer
Hmm.
in her box, looking all pretty up there. Have you come away from our conversations about Tobe Hooper with things you didn't know, or is this stuff that I've kind of just verbally regurgitated around you for years, and you're like, oh, I already know this story?
I did learn some new things. Like I didn't know about the story that you had recounted. The one that Rich hadn't even heard of.
Oh, Texas Chainsaw Manicure.
Manic, yeah, that one. That one was cool.
God, that was so funny.
Yes. And I did learn a whole lot. And granted, you do regurgitate a lot around me. I still feel that these conversations are important. And even though I'm aware of a lot of what you talk about, that doesn't mean that it's useless information because
Right.
everybody else out there can also hear it and benefit.
Yep. Yep. And you can choose to learn from it or not. I mean,
Exactly. Well, on that note, Rich, do you have any last words on this topic?
No, I am really jazzed now for part 3, and I seem to remember when Rick started talking about a part 2, I was like, I don't know that we need it. And here we are, we're going into part 3. So you know what? Who's better than us?
Hey. All right. Well, then we're going to catch you on the next round. Bye, Rich.
Bye.
Ricky, do you have any last words?
Only if these fat little aliens with feet land in your backyard, make sure you have a lot of pennies. Lots of pennies.
That was a copper.
Yeah.
Sounds
Or actually,
good.
no, that wouldn't work now. Our pennies, which are limited, aren't even of copper anymore, are they? Aren't they partially made but with something else now?
Yeah. Pennies
Yeah,
aren't.
squirrel.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
squirrel.
so you would need collector's coins now. You would you would have to raid a coin shop.
Oh
Wow.
boy.
Vintage pennies. Yeah.
Gonna have to rewrite my rewrite of the remake of Invaders from Mars remake.
Aw,
Oh
shoot.
dear God.
It's a remake of a remake of a remake.
Well, I guess I'm looking forward to it regardless.
Yeah, you'll like it. So help me, you'll like it.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this, guys. We'll catch
All right.
you on the next round.
Love you guys.
Love you.
See
Bye.
ya.
All right.